poetry. So you can find out how fast your car goes on 435, and you only have 5 minutes to get between those two hotels. At FNBO, which is First National Bank of Omaha, we're committed as an organization to help our customers and our communities to grow and to thrive. And incremental with that is leadership. Without leadership, you can't have quality communities, quality organizations, quality households. And it really defines the why and what we do. We also believe that leadership is not something that is due to an organizational chart. It's not by position. It's a verb. It's an action. We can all act with leadership. So this is why we sponsor this leadership series, because we think it's such a critical component to the benefit of us all. So we've heard from a lot of great speakers in our speaker series over the past number of years. This morning's is no exception. So it's Greg Musil. And earlier this week, Greg and I got together and kind of talked about some general things. Two things came away from me about the presentation. Greg, like many others, has found that it's pretty difficult to sit down and write a speech about yourself or a presentation about yourself, and that introspection is more difficult than it would seem. And second, Greg's leadership is kind of an orientation towards service to others. So Greg grew up in Frankfort, Kansas, which is on a small farm in north and central Kansas, if you're not familiar with that. He graduated from Kansas State University, graduated cum laude with a degree in political science on a U.S. Army ROTC scholarship. From there, he was also the student body president of Kansas State. From there, he went to the University of Virginia for law school, where he earned a designation of Order of the Coif. For those of us who are not attorneys, that's the top 10% in the class. And he was also on the editorial board of the law. After law school, he became a legislative assistant for U.S. Senator Nancy Kassebaum. Spent 3 years in Washington, D.C. on her staff before returning, well, I should say coming to Overland Park, to start his private practice. Started with Polson L. PC, and then I will not say the entire name of his, let's call it Rouse, where he's still currently an active attorney partner. Greg's time in Overland Park has been heavily involved in all aspects of community, civic, and government service. And there's way too many to mention. And you think I'm kidding. I was completely unprepared for the task. They say brevity is wit, and I certainly don't have enough wit to condense Greg's accomplishments and honors into brevity. But from there, 2 quick notes to mention. Greg did serve on the Overland Park City Council. He was city councilman for 8 years, as well as the president for 2. And he did have a run for Congress to represent our district as a U.S. representative. Greg shared with me that his upbringing in this small north central Kansas farm really kind of shaped his overarching leadership philosophy. He feels his most rewarding professional experiences occur when he's helping others, and that direct interaction. And his most valuable time is coaching his daughters. It's my pleasure to introduce you Mr. Greg Musil, Esquire.
All right, can you hear me? Yes, you can. I'd like to ask Tim Holverson, Bill Ferguson, and Alex Egan to stand, please. They got the uniform. It's a pretty impressive group. They wore a blue suit, and people think COVID was all bad, but because of COVID, I can sit here in a shirt that looks like your high school graphic paper without a tie. And I don't think we were allowed to do that before COVID. I do apologize for taking my jacket off, but I don't do well in the heat. So I appreciate everybody being here this morning. This is a great series, and when Matt said, or Tracy said, this is the final one, I thought really it was the final one, that we knew that this was going to be the breaking point, and it was time to move on. But you did add the final one this year. It's been a great series. Those of you who've been here, I mean, we had great speakers, and I've learned a lot from this. And I hope I can do something to keep that precedent kind of going. It's humbling to be listed as a longtime community leader. And at some point you realize that's just a matter of outliving everybody else, or all the good speakers have already been taken. But to me, what longtime community leader in Overland Park symbolizes is that Overland Park is a place of opportunity. You don't have to be connected, special, go to the right schools, be at the right company to succeed in Overland Park, or to certainly to succeed in the Overland Park Chamber. And I frankly think I'm a perfect example of that, because when I moved here in 1987, I didn't know anybody in Overland Park. And I'll talk a little bit about that as I go forward. So to come from a small farm outside of a small town in north central Kansas, and to be here and to be categorized as a long-time community leader in Overland Park is truly humbling. And this, preparing for this, as Matt mentioned, is very difficult. I encourage everybody to do this yourself when you have some spare time, to think back on your life about what it is that made differences in your life, and hopefully things you did that might have made differences in other people's lives. Thought-provoking, it's a great phrase. Lawyers, words are our tools. You could think this is the worst damn presentation you've ever seen, and you would meet what was sold to you. It'll be thought-provoking. So my challenge is to try to make it positively thought-provoking. Good leadership qualities you'll be able to judge. Out by 9 a.m. is a guarantee. So the other thing you really have to be sure of is we'll be out of here by 9 a.m. I think most of my, however you would measure my life so far, it's based on genetics, which is parents and siblings who love me and cared for me and emphasized education. My mother was a teacher who taught in one-room schoolhouses, literally, grades K through 12. Went there at 6 o'clock in the morning, started the coal-fired stove, pre-World War II, so that when the kids got there at 6 a.m., or at 7:30 a.m., the building would be warm. So my dad's a high school graduate. They emphasize for all three of their children the importance of education. But I thought about this, and you know, when you're up here and you've heard all these other speakers, I'm kind of like Jennifer Lopez's fourth husband on their wedding night. I know what's expected of me, I'm just trying to make it interesting. So hopefully I can do that. This is Executive Leadership Series. Let me tell you, I'm not an executive. I've never been in the role of an executive, but I think of an executive as a CEO. I've done a lot of things in my life in what people would consider leadership titles or leadership positions, but I've never been an executive. I've never had executive power or authority over people. I've never been able to order anybody to do something, or even firmly suggest that they do something. The other people that you've heard in this series, Neil Sharma is a visionary who built a internationally known commerce and marketing, digital marketing firm. He was the CEO. Adam Hamilton built the largest Young Methodist church in the country and leads it. He's an executive. Joan Wells, who was last week, a strategic thinker who built a company and then joined a company in an executive leadership position. What I've done are things like city council, chair of the chamber. I've been chair of the Consecrated Community College Board of Trustees. I've been on the board of the Kansas Leadership Center. None of those gave me any power or authority over anybody. And they were all in collaboration with other leaders. So my remarks today are focused on what I've tried to contribute when there's a group of people and I don't have power or authority over them. They don't have power or authority over me, and I'm trying to move the organization forward. And so that's what I hope to show today. The other thing about not being CEO is there's no individual responsibility. Matt has metrics that the bosses are looking at. The rest of you, as CEOs managing or running your company, have metrics. You have to accomplish something. In boards and in the positions I've been in, I've had the luxury, I suppose, of being not individually responsible. The sole exception to that might have been when I was chair of the chamber in 2008. And I was going to talk about this later as one of the challenges. The stock market lost 41% of its value during my time as chamber chair. That's the kind of leadership I was able to present. So if you aspire to be chamber chair, be assured you will never be as bad as Musil. So there's good and bad about not being an executive with power and authority or responsibility. I hope there are some nuggets in here that may relate to some of you, particularly as you serve not only in your business life, but in your social life, whether it's at your church or your PTA or a civic or charitable organization that might be helpful. This is an experience for me trying to reflect on this. It's one of those things where you almost feel like you're preparing your own eulogy because you start thinking back on things that you probably have done as you went through life and didn't realize you were doing it. So, the chamber forced me to have a slide. Whoops, that's wrong. So, this is the slide. My slogan is, you might guess, a little bit of a joke about my disability. My daughters and I jointly came up with the slogan, putting my best foot forward since 1976, when I had my accident. But I've always thought, everybody try to put your best foot forward every day on the one thing you can control. So that was a change in my life. I'm not going to dwell on it a lot, but I did, when I had a chance to get an award at my Rotary Club, I thought for the first time about how schizophrenic I've been because of that. I have tried for 46 years now to not be disabled. I've tried to demonstrate that I can do anything anybody else can do, whether it was play doubles tennis, or play basketball, or golf, or whatever. I didn't want to be seen as somebody who was disabled. The other side of me was to prove to everybody that if you're disabled, you can do everything everybody else does. And those are two kind of things that have created a tension in my life that I don't know if I've succeeded in either one of them. But at some point in your life, you realize that you are what you are. And so to be authentic, you need to talk about and do things that are authentic in your life. And so I've tried to get over that schizophrenia a little bit, but I will never completely get over it because of the dramatic part. The second part of the thing was imperfect lessons from imperfect leadership. As you reflect back about, and I've talked a lot about this today, you'll get sick of it. Everybody in this room, if somebody's perfect, please come up and do my presentation. We're all imperfect. We're imperfect as leaders. We're imperfect as followers. We're imperfect as spouses. We're imperfect as parents. So what you strive to do, what I hope I've tried to do, is just be the best you can be in the individual situations. This partly came from a sermon that Adam Hamilton did at Church of Resurrection, where I attend, where he had a sermon series about imperfect Christians and how we don't do a good job sometimes of living the life that we say we're going to do and we put out in public. So that's the second part of this. And the part about imperfections that I've noticed is the more you know somebody, the more you know their imperfections. And I think it's a lot easier to follow somebody's idealized image about whether they're a leader, whether they're a CEO, or they're a political candidate. I would like to believe only the good things about them. But when you know somebody, you have more doubts because you know they're imperfect. And so you have to struggle with that and figure out what is it about them that allows them to overcome those imperfections. I always start soft. And this is the curse of lifelong cuteness. That's my high school senior picture. That's to show my vulnerable side. And thank you, ladies, for not rushing the stage. But actually, age has been pretty good to me. I married off my younger daughter a year ago, August, and I married off my older daughter 2 weeks ago in Italy. And my extended family there, including our dogs, are on your right. So those are the things that trying to emphasize where you came from and where you are today. The challenge today is to try to put all of these thoughts over all these years into something that might make sense to you. And people have done different kind of presentations. I'm not going to go through a chronological life of Greg Musil. What I've tried to do is I've picked out 8 areas, probably too many, that I think have been important to me, my life, and what I've done that hopefully will be relevant to you. And they overlap and they intermingle, and so trying to figure out nice, crisp things is not really possible. The thing I really like about this series is it is people that actually practice what they preach. We've all been to leadership seminars. We've all got the list of tips. We've all got how we should treat people. These are the people you've heard from in this series, and thanks to FMBO again, are people that have actually put it into practice and have made it successful. And I think my last category is one that will resonate with you as to every speaker that you've heard today. So, the number one item is number one because I think it's the most important. It's about mentors, it's about relationships, and it's about connections. And, you know, we've gotten to the point where we think we have to have a mentor-mentee relationship. And there has to be a piece of paper that says you are now assigned to Matt Masalonis. I know nobody would want to be assigned to Matt Masalonis, but let's say you were. You would then be his mentee. But in reality, every day you are a mentor and you are a mentee. And I just remember LeBron James saying, I don't want to be a role model. I'm not a role model. Yeah, you are, whether you want to be or not. And whether you're a famous basketball player or whether you just work in the office. You affect people every day and they're watching you. And they're listening to you and they're observing. So you're a mentor everything you do. And you're a mentee with every meeting you're in and you're looking at other people. Observe, listen, and absorb. Make notes. These are things I've never done. I mean, as you look back, what are things people have done for you, or to you, or with you that were meaningful in your life? Make note of that sometime and emulate the good stuff and eliminate the bad stuff. You've got to accept lessons and constructive tips. I mean, I think that's the hard part for any of us, is we're all imperfect, but we don't have somebody to tell us. We want an anonymous email from somebody that says, you really screwed up on that one recently. So listen to that, and periodically look back and acknowledge those people that have helped you. And so I've listed a bunch of examples, because as you go through, when I turned 50, I had a book that said, list the 50 most important people in your life. Try that sometime. Once you get past family, then you realize every stage of your life has those people, whether it's your high school counselor, principal, teacher, coach, in college, it's one of your professors, in your first job, it's whomever you connected with that made you successful. But do that. So one of the lessons I learned, one of the things I learned going through this is I learned a lot of stuff when I was young that I didn't realize I learned. Anybody here at K-State, from K-State knows Dr. Chet Peters, who was the vice president for student affairs. He touched everything: students, admissions, scholarships, residence halls, food service, the health center, anything that dealt with students. Chet Peters was in charge of it. When you went into Chet Peters' office, he was a big deal. He was a big shot. He came around his desk, he sat down in a side chair with you, and he offered you a lemon drop. He didn't know anything about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. It wasn't a term. But he made you feel welcome, and he made sure you knew you belonged in his office. That struck me at the time, because I'm a scared little farm kid from 40 miles north, and I come in the first time to meet Chet Peters, and he comes around and sits down and shakes hands, asks you about your family, offers you a lemon drop. That's a lesson for all of us about how to make people feel included and belong. Pat Bosco was another guy at K-State. Pat was the most enthusiastic person I've ever met, still is. He's retired now. He has a place at the View in downtown the park. Pat had K-State 8-3 every football season. We'd sit down before the football season. This is when K-State was not very good. And he'd go through the thing, and he had everybody, we beat everybody except Oklahoma, Colorado, and Nebraska. We were 8-3 every year. We were never 8-3. We were never usually 3-8. But Pat exuded a confidence and a positivity in life that you couldn't help but try to follow. And I think that was a good lesson for me. Susan Stott was the coordinator of student affairs. She was a grad student who was assigned to student government. She had no choice. She had to try to help as student body president. Well, When you have a breakup of a relationship in college, you think the world's coming to an end, you need a friend who'll take you in and make you tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwich, right? That's what Susan Scott did for me. Again, she didn't have to do that. That wasn't her job. She did it because that was the human thing to do at the time. Those are lessons I learned just in the 5 years I was at K-State. I mentioned Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson was a mentor to me because he taught me how important, how actually safe it is to screw up, to self-deprecate, to make fun of yourself, to bomb jokes, because Johnny did it all the time, every night. And those of you who know Johnny Carson, gotta go to YouTube. He's a Nebraska small town kid who made it big and taught you how to laugh and laugh at yourself. And I think I learned that once I was old enough to stay up past 10:30. I worked in the U.S. Senate and I saw Bob Dole and Nancy Kasseler. Bob Dole had a serious disability earned on the battlefield of Italy. And he proved that it didn't matter. You could still succeed at the highest levels. He could never get away with it. Every day he had to button his shirt with a hook. But he did it. Nancy Kasseler proved at 5 foot nothing, that size doesn't matter when it comes to principles and integrity. I mean, she stood by her principles. She would listen, but she never gave in on her principles. And she never gave in on her belief that people were good. Bill North was a mentor here when I started practicing law. You know, you watch the TV shows. Bill North proved that you can be a really successful lawyer and you can be quiet and professional. You don't have to scream and shout. That's a lesson you need to learn as a young lawyer. Ben Craig. Those of you who know Ben Craig, influencers aren't always on a stage like this. Ben would have been very uncomfortable sitting here talking about his life. But he built Overland Park with some really other good, very smart people. But he wasn't on the stage. I used Ed Eiler as a modern example. Ed was on the council for 4 years, was a mayor for 24 years, was on the commission for 4 years, was chair of the commission for 12 years. Think about that public service. And have you ever heard anybody say, Ed Eiler just bragged about himself? Ed Eiler just said, I. Never did. Those are the examples of mentors that not only, they're not formal, they're informal, but you listen, you observe, and you absorb things from them. The second thing is about turning and tipping points. I turned 2 pages. There are points in your life you don't even know sometimes that they're there, but there are tipping points. And you recognize them either before or after. And I encourage you to go back and think about those things in your life that changed your direction. One of mine was a 1964 pump, pass, and kick competition in Frankfort, Kansas. Anybody participate in pump, pass, and kick sponsored by the Ford Motor Company? Just Tony? Come on. All right. I was a 2nd grade farm kid. You separate yourself into farm kids and the townies, right? The town kids all knew each other. They all played together. They all went down to the dime store together and got stuff. Farm kids didn't do that. I won the 2nd grade pump, pass, and kick. I got what would now be considered a starter jacket with the faux leather sleeves and Ford Motor Company on it. And I look back at that as a meaningful time in my life when I thought I could compete, I could participate, I belong here in this little tiny small town. And whatever group you're in, whatever size, figuring out if you belong and you can actually be part of it is important. I mentioned Johnny Carson. November 28th, 1976 is a tipping point. I call it stupid human tricks. My roommate had a gun, shotgun. He brought back from Thanksgiving. He thought it was unloaded. He pointed it at me. I pushed it down and pulled the trigger. It wasn't unloaded. That's a tipping point. But one of the things that's interesting, I talked about this a little bit in the challenges slide. I was in Army ROTC. I was going to let the Army pay for law school. I was going to be an Army career. And then I was going to get out at 42 and I was going to do my career. But I was going to be a lawyer. So this tipping point changed my direction in a way, but it didn't change my ultimate objective. But it's something that obviously was a turning point in my life. September 1977, Wildcat 9 Apartments in Manhattan, Kansas on Anderson Avenue. A dump, 4 guys in 2 bedrooms, bunk beds, and we had a cake party. And I'm standing on the steps of the apartment at the open breezeway, and I'm talking to this young lady named Julie Gover. And Julie Gover happened to be on the Union Programming Council at the K-State Union and was chair of the Issues and Ideas Committee. And she said, why don't you come to our next meeting? And I hadn't been involved in anything at K-State at the time other than the ROTC activities. Julie Gover got me into the Issues and Ideas Committee. And the next spring I was elected to Student Senate. The next spring I was elected to Student Body President. Julie Gover changed my life. And you know, those chance encounters you need to take advantage of. Ronald Reagan's budget cuts. My first year of law school, I can only afford Virginia because of guaranteed student loans. Ronald Reagan was going to eliminate guaranteed student loans, even after I voted for it. So we all go to Washington, and we meet with Senator Castlebaum, and I'd met her before as student vice president. She calls me the next week and tells me that she thinks it's going to be okay, and if I ever want to come to Washington, would I come interview? So Ronald Reagan's budget cuts took me to Washington and reintroduced me to Senator Castlebaum, and ended up for 4 years of my life. Matt Keenan's fax machine. Who knows Matt Keenan? He used to write for the Star. He's a lawyer at Chicago. It was December of 1990, I think. And he faxes me on curly fax paper and says, I was in this leadership Overland Park thing last year. I think it would be good for you. You ought to apply. The deadline's tomorrow. Well, I called him, talked to him, I applied. I met Barry Burge, I met Ben Craig, I met 20 other classmates, many of whom are just best friends of mine today. And it allowed me to engage in Overland Park. Matt Keenan was a mentor, even though he's my age. He was somebody that said, you look like you might be good at this, why don't you do this? The last one, December 1992. I'm giving my oldest daughter a bath, and my wife comes in and says, Amy Spears on the phone. Amy Spears was the 4th Ward Council member in Overland Park. And I'd known her from when she came back to Washington to beg for money like cities do every year. And I knew her because I'd helped on her re-election campaign in 1980. And she called, so I get on the phone and said, what do you want? You know, I'm still nervous. She goes, I'm not going to run again. Would you be interested in running for my seat on the council? So I run for city council, and I'm on that for a bathtub time in 1992 in a relationship with Amy Spears. Those are turning and tipping points that are important. Failures and challenges and rebound. If you haven't failed yet, raise your hand, let me know, because they just never know. There's some really smart people in this town. They're part of the human experience, and if you don't experience failure or challenges, then I don't know what you're doing. You're sitting at home, not doing anything. And so how you rebound from those, I think, is important. March 1976, I suffered a crushing defeat in my first student senate election. This was before my accident. I'm a freshman spring semester. I put my name in. I don't do anything because I'm not confident enough to do anything. What chance did I have to win? Not very much. The next time I ran, you learn a little bit. You put signs up. You talk to people from your residence hall. You go through the directory and you find people you know. So you learn something. You have to learn and you have to balance and rebound from something that at the time was, you know, I'm kind of embarrassed to put my name in and I don't talk to anybody. My roommate might have voted for me, but I didn't get very close. Life changed in 1976. Divorce, I'm not going to go into that detail, but you know, nobody goes into a marriage thinking they're going to get divorced. Even if you have a prenup, you don't think that's going to happen. So when it happens, that is a challenge. When you've got 2 children aged 11 and 16, you've got challenges in your life that you have to figure out how to work out. And that personal challenge affects every other part of your life. You don't go to work that next day and say, well, I'm just going to be just like I was the day before. So you're dealing with other people who understand they're facing challenges too that you probably don't even know about. August 2000, Matt mentioned I ran for Congress in 2000 and came in a distant second in the Republican primary. When you put a year of your life into something and you put your family through it and you ask all your friends to give you money and they give you money and you fail, it's hard to crawl out from under the stairs. And I got off city council in 2001 because that was the promise I made my family, that if I didn't win the Congress, I wasn't going to run again for council. And I kind of was quiet for a few years trying to just do service things to prove yourself. But it is a public failure that if you know somebody that runs for office and that loses, be a good friend and show up the night of the election at their house. Okay? Support them through the election and support them afterwards. Because win or lose, it is a challenge. 2008, I mentioned the worst championship in the history of Overland Park. I did that so that Tracy could recruit. Next thing is learning. And this is just about lifelong learning is not a passing fad or luxury. You got to figure out what you can do better, what you can learn each time you go through something. And what does it mean to be disabled or diverse? We all talk about it. You know, it's very controversial. And my significant other, and I will announce it now, my now fiance, told me, I'm a very lucky man. Said, oh boy, you want to get into that? I'm going to get into it just a little bit. When I was at K State after my accident, I was on this group called Students for Handicapped Concerns. And we were an advisory group to help implement the 1974 Vocational Rehabilitation Act, which said that if you get federal funds, you need to figure out something about accessibility. Well, we have a campus that was started in the 1860s. It's not very accessible. I didn't even know this was a lesson time. We spent an hour one night discussing whether we should have standardized heights for light switches in every room so that blind people would know where they were. Blind people use light switches. After an hour, we all went, oh my God, we're stupid. You know what? We didn't have a sight challenged person at the table. So we didn't have the right people at the table. That's the first experience about what diversity means. At the last Johnson County Educational Research Triangle thing, we had somebody working with KU Clinical Trials, and they got a $750,000 grant from the National Cancer Institute to do these special trials during COVID. But 40% of the people they were having the trial had to be from underrepresented groups. That raises the hair on the back of the neck of some people. What do you mean by that? You know what they meant by that partially? People from rural Kansas are underrepresented in clinical trials. Clinical trials deal with urban people because that's where people are. So my mom and dad were never represented in cancer clinical trials. So that's diversity. And when we try to explain that to folks who have a different view of it, keep those things in mind. I was wheelchair bound for the first time in 2017 when I had rotator cuff surgery. Couldn't be on my crutches. 3 months in the wheelchair teaches you something about being in a wheelchair. I played wheelchair basketball for 10 years, but I always got up and walked away on crutches. Go get in a wheelchair, rent a wheelchair, take it around your offices. Next time you talk to somebody who's in a wheelchair, don't bend over. Sit down. Kneel down with them. Get to eye level. It's not hard for anybody to do. And I don't blame anybody that doesn't do that because people don't know. But keep your eyes open for those kind of opportunities. City Council, I mean, you guys know it wasn't nearly as bad as it is now from Tom's experience as far as the anger, the angst, the volume of people. We had that, we didn't have. I got off before email. It was beautiful. John, what time do we have?
7 minutes.
Okay. Many of you follow Johnson County Community College, and Paul was on the board. We had a trustee that was very disruptive, and for unproductive reasons. And I was chair, and I learned two things that I'd never really thought about before. I knew it, I didn't think about it. Tone matters. When you say something, it's as much about how you say it as what the words are that you use, particularly with somebody that's already picking a fight. And Laura Smith-Everett, who's on the board now, I mentioned that to her before she started, the month before she started on the board. And the first board meeting, she texted me and said, tone, in the middle of the meeting. And it was beautiful because You know, I'm a lawyer, I'm competitive, I like to fight, I'm always right, I can win any argument. That's not your role as the chair or a collaborator in the group. And we got through it. It wasn't easy. And your job to get on board is to make sure you're not the disruptive one and you're the productive one. Charter Commission was interesting because there are a lot of people that want to bring heat, not any light. And when 150 of them showed up at the KU Edwards campus and filled the room over capacity for COVID and wouldn't wear masks, and we had to cancel the meeting, and I was cursed and called names and told to go to hell. It's a different experience if you haven't done it. But the message to all of you is we can't be bullied by those people. Whatever their political ideology is, we can't be bullied by those people, and we will lose what we have. All right, I'll go through this real quick. Take advantage of opportunities. Keep your options open. Again, I found a lot of experiences from K-State. There was a building on campus burned in the 1960s, not during the protest, but some arsonists just burned the building. It looks like a castle. It was called Midwich, built in 1911. It had been set vacant and ugly and dirty, with trees growing in it for 10 years. And the legislature kind of leveraged our president into saying, we're going to tear it down. They're going to fund us to tear it down. And students went crazy. And I looked out of the union window and said, there go my people, I must find out where they're going so I can lead them. It was an opportunity. I didn't start this groundswell. There were 1,000 students outside of Anderson Hall, the administration building, wanting to crash into the building and tell the president what for. We ended up going to Topeka with about 100 students. Everybody well behaved. Everybody had the arguments at hand, and we saved the building. But it was an opportunity, it just kind of fell in my lap. I joke about, there they go, I just lead them, but it was somewhat true, because that was led by grassroots folks for a positive reason and a constructive reason. This is my favorite picture of my dad when he was about 85. And I put this because my second category is finding joy and laughter. This is a farmer his family lost 3 farms during the Depression. He lost a thumb at age 12 in a farm accident. High school education, and yet he was a successful farmer. And if you're a successful farmer and rancher, you are a veterinarian, you are a botanist, you are a chemist, you are an accountant, you are a financial planner. And he did that. And he did it with joy almost every day. He did throw a hammer at a cow once. But the cow deserved it. So, if you can't, I can say this, it's a little over dramatic. If you can't have fun doing something or find some joy in it, it ain't worth doing. Now there are degrees of that. And sometimes the joy is 2 years from now, and you have to slug through all the plumbing to get there. But I just believe it's important to find joy in stuff. You need downtime. You need to find out whatever that is for you. Congress, 2000, I lose. After the election, Rich Hood, who was an editorial columnist for the Star, wrote a column about the election. Described me as grim and surly. Take stock in yourself when somebody calls you grim and surly, and you don't believe that's what you are. And that's what I came across as in that campaign. So I tell candidates now, be yourself, be authentic. If you lose, make sure you lose and they knew who you were. Because who wants to follow somebody who's grim and surly? It was a great life lesson. And hopefully I'm less grim and less surly now. I love dad jokes. Who's heavier? Professional athletes or convicts? Athletes, because the pros outweigh the cons. My daughter sent me that this week, and I'm never happier as a dad when my daughter's sending me dad jokes. We get together monthly breakfast groups. I read Reader's Digest. That's where I get all my good material. Balance. I'm gonna kind of skip through that because nobody believes I have it. But there are short-term and long-term plans and how you balance those. Because there are going to be long-term stuff where you overdo one thing. If you're going to be chair of the chamber that year, you're not going to have balance in the rest of your life. You're going to be doing chair of the chamber. If you're the chair of your administrative board at church, that is your balance for that year. But overall, find things that balance you and balance your family. People live in the gray area. If you haven't been in the darkness, you can't appreciate the light. That goes back to the challenges. I mean, if everything went well every day, everybody was friendly, and all your clients paid on time, and they all loved you, and they sent you notes telling you how good you were, after about a month, wouldn't you go, what's wrong? Humility and grace is the last one. Our history is replete with humble servant leaders. So be confident without being arrogant, be firm without being bullied, and procedural fairness. We kill that in Overland Park. We have more public hearings, more hearings that are ever necessary to get to the same solution. But they are necessary because they allow people to talk and vent, and they allow ideas to come out. So that's part of being humble, is not understanding from the start that your solution is the right one. So speak up, don't demean, break bread, find common ground. And I just saw this last week. I don't post a lot on Facebook, but I saw this and I posted it. Our job is to love others without stopping to inquire whether or not they are worthy. That's a lesson that I'm going to try to take every day, because we don't know about other people. I know a lot of you well. I know a lot of you a little bit. I know a lot of you not at all. But you all have challenges every day, and if I'm working with you on a committee or something, I need to take that into account and be aware of the fact that you are worthy, no matter what. And that's how I'm going to treat you. And Overland Park has done that. You don't hear Carl Gerlach, Ben Craig, Mary Birch, Steve Wilkinson. Those people don't talk about I. They talk about we, and they talk about us, and they talk about collective successes. All right, takeaways. This was the second part. Be present. It is not hard, as I said, this is an open chamber. This is an open city. If you show up and you keep your commitments and you just show up, be present, you can be an engaged part of this. Step forward, raise your hand. Sometimes it's hard, but there are going to be 10 other people raising their hand with you, and you're going to be able to work together. Work hard. I mean, do the extra. That might mean coming a little early, being to breakfast on time, like Tracy always knows I am. Don't ask others to do what you won't do. Is one of the best things in leadership, I think. Understand limitations. You can't do it all. You can't control it all. But you can do what you can do. And that's your obligation if you want to be a leader. And every one of us is a leader in some fashion. Celebrate success. I think if you don't look back and say, I'm really proud of some of the stuff that we did. I'm really proud of the convention center of the hotel that was approved when I was on city council. I'm really proud that we preserved the Rhodes farmstead and the green space down there so that everybody has it. I'm really proud that we accepted more land from the Kemper Foundation to expand the Arboretum. I mean, those are things that I look back on and say that's something that was really good. So I close with we are imperfect humans and imperfect leaders working with imperfect humans. Do the best you can. Your legacy will be a job well done. So that's the end. Ready for questions?
So what did you do with this pen? Is that you?
That is me as a younger man. It's the thinker statute. And so I think what we lack today in society a lot is we're all busy, we're moving too fast. We don't think, we don't reflect, we don't watch Fox and MSNBC to see if there are different perspectives. So if, there's another sermon series that said, stop, think. Before you do something, stop and think, and then somebody has to think again. Because we need to do that. We all move really fast. We take shortcuts. We use words that mean something to us and mean something differently to somebody else. So stop and think. If somebody gives you trouble, go to Big Biscuit. Can't hurt.
Goss and Greg Musil?
The reason I talk to candidates about being authentic is I listen to consultants and pollsters who told me this is the only path to win. And I think they were right. But at the end of the day, I took a path that wasn't me, and I lost. And my lesson was, if you're going to lose, lose authentically. So my campaign, it was about the time that Kansas Board of Education was going to eliminate the requirement that we test evolution as part of the science curriculum. So we were a little bit of a laughing stock in the country. So that was the thing I picked up on to say, we have to be smarter than that. We have to be educational. We have to embrace science. But he did it in a way that was harsh. It came across to some people as harsh. And so I'm not sure Rich Hood wasn't right. You know, I had some nice soft campaign commercials with my family and stuff, but it just teaches you that, well, it teaches you to listen to yourself as much as you listen to others.
If we were to have Barbara or girls here today and we asked them about you, what would be descriptors that your girls or your fiance would say about you, Greg?
One of the things I haven't done that irritates the heck out of me is not repeat the question so everybody can hear it. If my daughters or my fiance were here, what descriptors would they use? That's probably too emotional for me to answer. I think they would say committed, fun but serious, compassionate, loving. One of the things we did, should have done a turning point. April 2005, I'm in Manhattan. I get a call from my daughter, my older daughter, who had been volunteering for the Humane Society of Kansas City, Mid-American Humane Society. Dad, there's a dog. Kansas City pound. It's going to be put down tomorrow. And we just need to keep it for until Saturday. This was Monday night. It was a mascot. I can't remember his name. So could we just keep it till Saturday? I'm standing in the hallway parking lot and say, sure, honey, I'll be home. We'll keep it till Saturday. About 110 adopted out dogs later, we stopped paying foster care for dogs. But, you know, that, I think my daughters, that was meaningful to them, meaningful to me. We did something together, we did something good. We had one foster fail. My daughter has one of the last, from the last litter we had. So I think they would say that kind of compassion would be hopefully number one. Matt.
So, it's my understanding your business is in order. It's about local hours. How have you been able to balance the practice with your commitment to your family and to your...
How do I balance my commitment to my family and my commitment to billable hours?
Well, and not even that, also to the public.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've had great support from my firms. I mean, my partners have supported me in doing that because they thought it was important. Sugar Thompson Kilroy for 21 years, they supported me, including a year running for Congress. Reduced salary, but it is a sacrifice. Anybody that goes and does something in public service, it's a sacrifice. I mean, Tom, how much time do city council members take away from their job or their family? It's a lot. So I think you just have to, if you want your family's buy-in, that this is worth it to them too. But it's a sacrifice. I could have been a better lawyer. I think I could have made more money, but that's not what drives me from my lessons growing up on the farm, where everybody has to contribute, everybody has to give back. I mean, I think you just try to find the right balance. There were times in my life when I was out of balance, where 2008 was a chaired the Rotary Star Spangled Spectacular in Corporate Woods, and I chaired the chamber, and I chaired Johnson County's for Justice campaign against electing judges. So that was a year, but I was divorced at the time. My daughters were both old enough to be in school on their own, so it was a time I could do that. But you got to find your own balance. Just don't give up on it and say, this city, this county, this country can't afford that. Yeah, Phil?
Greg, you talked about turning points, tipping points that led to opportunities in
you also have goals, written goals that you work towards as long term?
You know, I talked to Matt about this because I've never been a planner. I've never sat down and said, 5 years I want to be here, in 10 years I want to be here. Other than I wanted to get a little job at a law firm when I moved back to Washington. I eventually wanted to be a partner in a law firm. I always wanted to do something in elected office. But I think that's why I put up there, keep your options open. I never locked myself into a path that didn't allow me to go other directions if they became available. So I'm not a good example of somebody that strategically plans anything. I mean, that's why I was Jonah Wells last time. I mean, she's a strategic thinker and planner. And I'm not. I'm more of a, kind of want to go over here and let's just do a really good job and head in that direction. So there are better people in this series to talk about how you set those short-term and long-term goals. I'm sure I had them kind of ambiguous in my head about what I wanted to do, but I put myself in a position where when the Holy Spirit called, I was able to take advantage of that. It was something I wanted to do. But I never aspired to be on the Overland Park City Council as a specific goal or the community college. There were things that were their opportunities arose, and they fit my life goals, my purpose. Another kid.
Two comments and then a question. One, your opening comment about not being an executive is far too humble because in all those roles that you've had tremendous influence and power, as you said, whether you recognize it or not, maybe you weren't in an executive group, so I consider it executive. And two, I will, in terms of you following along that line of ability, it was kind of for the room. One of my best memories of you is throwing a football in the parking lot in the K-State football stadium with my son. And he could throw and catch a long football, so you can't. So
I could in 1993.
2008-ish. So anyway, I appreciate that. So you give maybe advice or your philosophy, but what's your wish for the people? And you mentioned a lot of leaders from Overland Park and how they built this community where it is today. What's your wish for the next generation in this room to be for what it's going to be next? What's your hope and wish that people can be?
You know, I think I've always heard that millennials, they're not the only next generation, that they want to know the why in whatever job they do. My fear, what I want the next generation to understand is that this city, this county didn't happen by accident. I mean, Overland Park was created out of parts of the unincorporated county that nobody wanted because of people like Craig. And it will not continue to happen just because we've got momentum. If we want to attract and retain talent, we have to keep up with the modern world. And some people don't want to do that. And some of you may not want to do that, and that is a choice for the city of Overland Park and the county of Johnson. But I want the next generation to understand it's a choice. And they can either not participate, try to keep it the way it is now, or try to improve on what's already been built, the foundation that we have. But it's going to change one way or the other. Doing nothing is not an option if we want to grow. And I'm a development attorney, so I'm just getting paid to say that. Here's what I want. I want my next generation, my two daughters, to come back to Overland Park, if possible, to Johnson County, to the Kansas City Metro. They will not do that. Now, they're both here right now, and they're probably going to stay. But where are our kids going? Because we raise our kids to go explore the world, right? They don't just go to KU or K-State or Mizzou. They go everywhere. And they go to grad school, and they travel internationally. What are we going to do to bring them back here? And for those of you who don't have children yet, someday, if you choose to, you're going to want your kids to be close to you. So I want the next generation to think about that. What are we going to build here so that people keep coming here and we keep having the quality of life we have? That's not very difficult.
Last one.
One more.
First off, go Cats.
Yeah.
Secondly, kind of playing off of that, for younger people out there in the community, what is your recommendation on those who do want to, get into the community, who want to get involved with the community? What's going on in the community, help grow the community, and continue on what Overland Park, Johnson County is doing?
Two words, show up. Now, what do you show up to? There's a major comprehensive plan going on at the city of Overland Park. They're trying to get grassroots people to say, what do I want this city to look like physically from a planning perspective 20, 30 years from now? All you gotta do is show up to that. Melissa Vancouver was on the steering committee. Raise your hand, Melissa. If you want to get involved in that. Apply to Leadership Overland Park nominations are open this month.
Well, we're actually in the process of picking the class.
Nominations are closed. No? Think about Leadership Overland Park next year. Volunteer at the chamber. I mean, volunteer at your church, volunteer at your school, just show up. Because you will meet people who then are involved over here and over there, and they can help get you involved. But I think the first thing is to not be afraid to show up as the newbie, as the young person that looks at all the old farts and go, I'll never crack that, Because I was one of those young folks at one time that thought you could, how do you crack the leadership of Overland Park? Well, you show up and you do the work. So that would be my advice. If anybody wants to help get involved, call me afterwards. I'll be happy to figure out where you might want to plug in.